Springs. And in areas in which we can afford it, we try to restore what's been lost. And in many instances where we can't restore it, then we try to recreate authentic replacement, recreate authentic structures and conditions of our city. But this right here, it's a tragedy. Those stones, when you look at that truckload right there, that would, if you went to buy that, that's $15,000 to $20,000 worth of limestone. Historic, 120-year-old limestone. And they spent less than $3,000 having concrete installed right there. And all that little truckload just got hauled off to one of the property owners' homes. And 20 years from now, when most of us are gone, these property owners are no longer here, this slate black imprinted concrete will be what reflects our city rather than the historic limestone that we've had there. So what I would ask of you in this consideration is, first of all, in looking at the sidewalk code, I think that it needs some adjustments and improvements to be more specific about protecting our limestone. It specifies in there that it's supposed to be protected, but it's not explicit enough. And if you wish, I would be willing to rework a draft and give it to the city attorney for his consideration as well before coming to your table about some improvements I would suggest. But in the meantime, with the existing code, I think that the mayor and the council needs to discuss this with the building inspector, because apparently he hasn't read the code. And all these property owners up there were talking to me about what they were being told by the building inspector. I heard every story from every individual property owner who were irate. And out of the 200 feet up there that they started with, 150 of it's being repaired. And that 150 was in worse condition than this 50 that was replaced. And there needs to be someone needs to be held accountable for this. And we can't have this mistake going on anywhere else in town. And so all I ask of you is that you consider for a future meeting an ordinance that would help clean this up. It's sat in Planning Commission for years and bounced in and out of there before it was rewritten at this council table last March. And I think that what was produced was not something that is really applicable. Apparently, the first application of the sidewalk ordinance was a disaster. So it needs some attention, and your employee needs some attention and explanation. The city deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Pownall.
Do I have any time left after he's
Barely.
so eloquent? I agree with the mismatch of the slate tint and the limestone.
That's pretty crappy.
Particularly whenever you look at the colors that are allowable. But what I find really, really interesting, and I don't want to point to anyone because we all do the same thing. The street and sidewalk ordinance from the code was in my basket whenever I checked it last. And I find it amazing that the ordinance that Mr. Satori referred to that council passed, amending Chapter 9.08, which directed basically the change of the sidewalk ordinance as it applies to the historic district, that this wasn't even, but I mean, you would think that this is what we were going to be talking about tonight. And I have a copy of the one that's on the archived ordinances on the webpage. And unfortunately, I'm glad Mr. Satori knows, because I sure couldn't tell, because it says passed and approved this date in 2010, and there is no date that this ordinance was passed, which is contrary to other archived ordinances. So I couldn't, I was making an assumption when I got this that apparently that ordinance did not pass because of what was happening with the sidewalks. And I happened to be watching some on Saturday being jackhammered out up the street a little ways from the work that Mr. Satori has the pictures of, that was good limestone. So we have a problem somewhere, and I'm not going to point any fingers, but we definitely need to address it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Ray, would you like to address this issue also as the building inspector?
Sure.
All right, very good.
I'm Bobby Ray, the building inspector. Just to clarify, when I met with the property owners, they were not told that they had to completely repair their sidewalks. They were given a copy of the ordinance and the HDC guidelines if they chose to replace. That was their option. And the main thing that we have strived for is for yes, we love the historic. I don't have a problem with the limestone. The only thing with the limestone is the sidewalks need to be as close to ADA compatibility as possible. ADA says the surface is to be smooth and continuous. Anybody that's dealt with limestone knows when it's smooth, it's slick. And like I said, I have not misrepresented the city as far as telling people they have to replace their sidewalks. The area that's just up the street from Mr. Satori, I had spoke with them. I've also spoke with another property owner that's down on Spring Street closer to Basin Park, and they are going to refinish their limestone. I don't have a problem with that. I just, in my mind, I would like to have the sidewalks as safe as possible for our general public living here and our tourists that are going to be visiting here. And I'm only going by what the HDC guidelines as far as the color tinting. Yes, it is awful dark up there. I will agree with that. That tinting is one of the two that was approved by the HDC. It does lighten up over time. Personally, do I like the color? No, I don't. But it's within the HDC's guidelines. And the only thing that I discuss with the property owners when I go and meet with them on the limestone in front of their property is that if there are major slabs that are cracked, that seem to be cracked all the way through, they might want to look into that as a possible replacement. Yes?
You're saying that this is